So I've got a couple of PC Engine Duo RXs in for repairing, and we'll start with this one. We will turn over and just read the notes. So this is a Japanese PC Engine Duo RX. It's been RGB SCART modded and basically says does not power. We'll start by taking a look at what we can do here. The main focus of this video, I want to teach you how to diagnose and repair something that you know nothing about. So I've done probably one of these ever, and I can't remember anything about the one I did. But that doesn't matter when you have the skill set to be able to diagnose things. And that's what I want to try and teach you in this specific repair. So let's just get started, and I'll talk you through my thought pattern of how I repair something that doesn't have schematics and you know nothing about. So we've just got the lid off first and taken the screws off the motherboard. I'll just disconnect the disk drive as well and place that to one side, and then remove the board from the housing. And let's just take a look at what we're working with to begin with. So the first thing I want to do is, specifically with this one because it's a power issue, let's take a look at where the power comes in. So we know the power comes in here because on the case it literally says DC in. It says on the bottom of here DC in 9 volt, and there's also a plus pointing to the center of the DC barrel, which means it's a standard polarity where the 9 volts is expected to be on the inner tip of this DC jack. So with that said, let's try and bench power this and see where we get. So the first thing we want to do is find out which pin of the center here barrels out to which pin of the solder joints. So with the multimeter in continuity mode, all we have to do is touch one probe on the center pin and the other probe on a pin, and we can see it's this pin here. So that means that 9 volts comes in here and ground is here. If we then visually follow what happens, you can see the 9 volts comes down here and goes through the board. The ground comes down here and goes through the board. And if we flip that over, we see it's this inductor here. So this will be a choke to remove any noise from the DC power rail. So 9 volts comes through here to this pin here, and ground goes through here to here. Effectively, that means the 9 volts comes from here, jumps over here, and should carry on down. Goes all the way down, comes into this switch, which is the on-off switch. So when it's in the on position, it comes back up here, goes up this second line, all the way up, then it goes into here, goes along into here, carries on all the way along the board, goes over to here. So you can see there's a bunch of 9 volt spin-offs there, and the ground comes down here, jumps through and goes to the main ground plane that goes to the rest of the board everywhere. So let's just do some basic continuity tests first to check that choke is working. So multimeter in continuity mode, and we should get over the choke and over the choke, which we do. So we know the choke's good. So I think now is time to try and apply some power. So I'm just going to solder a wire to the 9 volt and ground, and we're going to power from the bench power supply. So we'll put a ground on here, and put a 9 volt on here. Then with our bench power supply set to 9 volts, and I've limited it to 2 amps because the original power supply has a 1 amp limit. So we know the console should be able to fully boot, and if there is a dead short, we're only putting 2 amps in. For the positive, so we can monitor the output, I'm just going to set my multimeter into voltage mode. In fact, we don't need voltage. Let's set the multimeter into amp mode because we're going to be more interested in the current draw. So this will be, so I will get the bench power, which is the input, going through the multimeter first, and then onto the wire here. And now if I turn on, we can see the current draw jump up to 460 milliamps roughly. So this is probably booting fine. There's no shorts, so I'm just going to now connect this up directly through the bench power without monitoring the current. So we could flip over the board and do some basic measurements that we see 9 volts coming in, which we do. So now we've got the power flowing through, and it seems like it would be working, but apparently this has no power. What would be the next steps? Well, I'll look where the power comes in, which we have. We've checked that it flows through here. The next thing I'd check is when it comes from the power switch and goes back up, where it goes to. Typically, most retro consoles have low dropout regulators, and they normally look like this, because they take a lot of energy to dissipate as heat to drop voltages from higher voltage to lower. They're inefficient, massively inefficient, but this is how the retro consoles used to do it. So once you've worked on a few retro consoles, you'll tend to find that for the most part, if you simply look for 7805's low dropout regulators, there are many consoles. Also, you can just follow the traces on this board. It's nice and easy. You can literally watch the power go through. And again, most consoles go through chokes to get rid of any AC noise. The chokes sometimes blow, which is the first power issue. It then flows through a switch. There's normally a fuse somewhere, but I don't believe I have seen a fuse on this board yet. So at least from where we've seen, there's no fuse in the way yet. Power comes through the switch back up, and it's clearly going to these regulators. So these regulators, if we take a look, you can see on this board it's handily written. We have input here, then ground is always the middle pin, or nearly always, and then output on the right side. So if we measure from the other side, we should have an input of 9 volts, ground, and then probably 5 volts is what's normal. And we have 2 here. They're probably both just 5 volt rails. It's to split the load between the regulators. So let's just verify that. Let's probe on ground. Here's one of those regulators. There's the 3 pins, and the other regulator's here. So if we just probe on, we don't need to know which way around it is, but there's clearly input, 9 volts. That should be ground, and this should be 5 volts you'd expect, which it is. This regulator, same again. We have 9 volts on the input, obviously ground, and then 5 volts on the output, which we do. So we know these 2 regulators are working. So we can safely presume now that the regulators are working. This is clearly the power area here, because it's all large capacitors, heat sinks. It's kind of obvious when you start looking at consoles. That will be your power area. This is where the game cart reading is. The biggest chip's typically the main processor. Again, this is just based off knowledge of older consoles and what you'd make presumptions of. This has got an RGB mod as well, so you can see this port's been swapped and it's tapping RGB off this chip, so we already know this chip handles probably video encoding as well as other things. The CD drive was here, so you're likely going to find that stuff under here is related to the CD. Not necessarily always the case, but a good idea. And down here is where the CD drive connected, so it's probably more than likely this is actually the CD area where the connectors come in, and this will handle like servo and motor control and things like that. But the issue we had on this was simply no power. So all I'd focus on for now is let's see if, say, main capacitors on the board have that 5 volts. It's always a good general test. So let's test this one. You can see we've got 5 volts. Let's try this one. 5 volts. So it seems like the board is receiving 5 volts. You can also go to like chips on the pins and just hunt around for possible values. But I'm fairly confident at this stage this console is likely working. Now the description mentioned this is RGB modded and possibly not done right, or maybe the wires are the wrong way around. So I don't have on me right now in the studio a way to connect up the SCART. That's down at work at the moment. So instead I'm just going to use an oscilloscope. And this will be good practice for showing you how to probe video signals, which is sometimes quite tricky for people. But it's a skill you really want to learn, especially on retro consoles, to be able to capture and see composite video, as well as RGB. And take a look at what these look like. So I'm going to just turn the console off. I'm going to add a ground wire somewhere near the port that we want to probe. So I'm just going to tap off a ground wire here. And we'll need that ground wire for the oscilloscope to be able to obviously ground the probe and get cleaner, more accurate readings. And when you're making a wire for a probe, I tend to just strip one end short that you're going to solder to the board and strip the other end long that you're going to attach your probe to. And just fold that long end in half and leave a sort of loop like this. And then fill that with solder. So with that on there, just blob some solder on, and now we have a nice, strong, thick connection to grip our probe on. Let's just solder that to the ground pad. And you can tell this is a ground pad because it's simply followed by I, ground coming here, hopped over the choke, through here, over here, and you can see it's here. Another good sign once you have ground is typically most cages will be grounded, so you have to just hold one of your multimeter probes on the real ground that you know is ground and probe around the board and find some good reference points. So with that, we now have a ground wire for the probe here. So let's just connect that up. We're going to just put a game in, so we're going to actually have some data on screen. So I'll just put a hue card in. And this is a Japanese console, so I'm going to insert a Japanese hue card. So now I'll show you the basics of setting up the oscilloscope. So this is by default when you first open it up. Almost all probes end up in a 10x1 configuration, and my probe is no different. So this is a 10:1 probe. And what that means is if we were to probe now on the 9 volt of the input, you can see my bench. If we were to add a measurement here and just say maximum, make that large, you can see it's saying it's 1 volt. So it's 10 times lower than we know it should be. So to fix that, to start with, click the probe A, which is the probe I'm using, the first probe. Click the probes, click standard, and click times 10. This now reconfigures the probe to the correct attenuation, and you can see now we have 9.2 volts. The benches say 9 volts, and this is because there is ripple on the line. So if we want to see this ripple here of noise, because this is just simply a maximum, it's not, the actual voltage, it's the 9 volts plus the noise, we could change our probe to AC, so it lowers down, and then lower the overall voltage from 10 to a really small value. So you can see now 500 millivolts. You can see we have noise on this bench power supply. So it's got about 100 to 200 millivolts of ripple. And you can see there the maximum here also agrees. So if you took that 0.2 off, you'd end up with exactly 9 volts, which is where we are. We'll just chuck it back to the 10 volts and DC mode. And now let's just probe, say, a random pin here, which I believe is one of the RGB signals, and turn the console on. And you can see there we see some signals, and this is likely one of the RGB values. So RGB is very similar to composite in terms of capturing. So let's just be able to capture this a bit easier. You can lower this down to get to 5 volts, but then you can see you start going off the screen. So your first problem will be, how do I see this small signal here? I'll just pause it. You can zoom in and kind of see, there's not much detail here. That's not really of any use, what we're capturing at the minute. And it's also offset by 4 volts. So the RGB signals are sitting on top of 4 volts. It's not been DC blocked yet because it's coming straight out of the Hue chip. So sometimes the signals are referenced to ground down here, and we have no problem. We can just lower this value down to grow the signal. However, when they are offset from ground and you still need to zoom in, the simplest way, if I just probe back on, is to just change your probe mode to AC again. This will naturally DC block the signal and average out. And now you can shrink down and grow your signal. You won't always see the ground because obviously this is averaged on AC, so it's going to float centrally. But you get the idea that ground is down here and the values go up so you can see more detail. The second issue is for video signals, you're going to usually have 60 frames a second, and at the minute we're capturing 1 millisecond per square. So this little square here is a millisecond. That's way too long in terms of capturing a single frame, a single line on a screen. A good average for capturing lines on screen is around 100 microseconds. If we were to pause that, you can see here, I can start to see that every one of these dips will be the H-sync. So you can see here, we can see roughly 15 lines, horizontal lines of information. You could obviously go closer and closer, and you can now see at 10 microseconds, you see just over 1 line. With that, you can see it's not really capturing anything specific because we have no trigger on, so it's jumping all over the place. So if I instead probe the composite, which on this pin is, I believe, this pin here, which it is. And if you want those pins, just jump on retro6.wiki, go to PC Engine Duo, and I've done some AV outs, so we know this pin's composite, this is RGB modded, so it's got this port on at the minute, and composite is the second pin in on when it's the way we're looking at it, the right side here, because we're looking from this port. So if we probe on there, we can get the composite signal. So as I mentioned, this composite signal is very similar to the RGB. So let's just see if composite is actually floating above DC. Let's just change the probe back to DC. And yes, we can see, similar to the RGB, it's floating 2.2 volts. So we're still going to have to leave it in AC mode, lower it to fill the screen like we do. And now what we want to do to stabilize this is to put a trigger on. So click trigger. Auto trigger for now is fine. And then this yellow dot symbolizes at what voltage the signal has to rise in this case, because we have it as a rising edge. We've selected here rising. Select falling as well. So at what value this blue line has to rise above before it triggers and captures on that point. So if we move it out of the way, you can see nothing captures. So this super slow update here is because the trigger is never firing, and this just overflows to just at least update the screen once a second. If we lower this down to hit one of those actual signals, you can see we can start to lock onto a signal. The signal we're interested in is this drop here, the sync value. So if we lower it down, and you can see you can drag left and right as well, you can see now I've managed to lock onto the sync value fairly cleanly. So there's a little bit of jumping, as you can see, because of this noise here. So you're not really stable. You want this image to not move. This sync wants to be rock solid. So this noise you can see, if I just freeze that frame and zoom in, you can see this noise here is off our bench power supply. That's the 200 millivolt ripple we saw. But we need to clean that up in order to capture cleanly. So one quick way of doing that is to go to the probe again, go to digital signal processing, DSP, activate the filter, and then increase the frequency. And you can see the signal can be super clean, but you lose detail. You want to keep your color burst. And this simulates a low pass filter. So you can see how super clean that signal is now. Now it's not the real signal. The real signal is this. But for capturing and visualizing, we can clean up the signal. We can increase it to a 10 megahertz. And you just want to keep it so that this noise is just about gone and you lose no signal integrity. So now we have a really nice, clean and almost solid capture of this signal. If we reduce it to 10, so we can see one full line, and we can change the trigger. We go to trigger, back to falling edge to shift it to the start. You can see now we have a really nice, clean capture of a composite signal. What we have here is the voltage drop of the sync. So this is the start of a new line. This is then color burst information, which tells us about what phase the color is going to appear in the next section. And then this section here is a single line of information across the screen. It comprises of luma, which is slow rising values to symbolize the brightness. And then the fast waves here, these spikes, are exactly like this, the color burst. They are pieces of color information that superimpose on top of the luma. So you don't need to know all that information, but if you did want to know more, if you go to retro6.wiki, go to video standards and composite video, you can see here's what we've just seen. We have the sync drop, we have the color burst, and then we have, this is just a symbol of a color bar. So you have these solid lines here, which is the luma, and then you have the color burst superimposed, and the final signal gets all mixed together like this. If you also look at the Atari 2600 and extracting composite video, this is me making the clean comp, and you can see the luma signals, the color burst signal on its own, and a whole read up of how composite kind of works, as well as some of the faults in the composite signal. So if you're interested in how exactly composite works, I've done a hell of a lot of information here that you can see and understand. So you can see here, there's the sync drops, and here's the lines. So we're zoomed into sort of this little area here, and we are seeing exactly this single line drop here, color burst, and a single line of color information, and then the next line. You can double check things like the voltage values are right. When it's disconnected from an actual TV, this should be around 600 millivolts. You can see it's actually 420, so it's slightly under voltage for what it should be. But TVs will work within this range no problem. You can see the color burst should also be 600, and it's still 400. And the overall luma should be 1.4 volts when it's pure white, and it's 1.2 volts. So they tend to find the standards on these are actually very similar across a lot of these retro consoles. The composite video isn't exactly the correct spec. It's within range and things will still work. But if you read up on the actual specification, which is in video standards here and all described, you can see that if we go to the voltages here, the luminance should be 700 millivolts when connected to a TV, which is, it gets halved because of a voltage divider, so it should be 1.4 volts. The color burst should then be 600. And the sync should be 600, and we have effectively 400, 400, and 1.2. But as I've mentioned, this is well within spec, so I know for a fact this composite video will be showing valid signal. But hopefully that shows you how to capture a composite signal. Let's take a quick look at audio as well, because audio is a totally different thing. I believe this pin below it is audio, so there's composite, and the one below I think is audio. And you'll see when you capture audio, the first thing you want to do is turn off all triggers. You're not going to be triggering on audio. Just let it run free so it updates fast. And you can see this wave is just pretty much all over the place. Audio is a lot slower than video. So the key here to see audio and visualize audio is to change your time here. So from 10 microseconds, we want to go all the way up to probably 5 milliseconds as my default for looking for audio. And there you can see you can now visualize the audio of the game playing. If you go even slower, so just slower in time, you can even go to real time if you take it up to sort of a second. This is now real time audio. And you can see that's bouncing up and down. So that's the audio of the game actually playing. What I tend to find for visualizing audio, go to around 5 milliseconds and you see the audio. Don't forget, however, to turn off the digital signal processing so you can see the audio clearly. You only really want to filter the signal when you get into low voltages that you are interested in monitoring. So I'm confident here that we have actual output now. So let's just set the scope back to 100 microseconds. We'll probe on the red, green and blue pins. So you can see there we've got one of the red, green and blues. I think this one's green here. We have that. And the other one's here. So we have all the signals we need. We have composite, we have the red, green and blue, we have the audio. So this is a fully booted console. I don't even need to plug in the cable to know this is working. But that begs the question, the customer said this didn't work and there was no power. So we've started with the bench, it definitely works. So is this port physically damaged inside? Or what's more than likely, his power supplies are going to be faulty. So let's just turn this off, disconnect our bench. And the problem with these consoles, some of them, they don't have any power indicator, so you can't tell when it's turned on without a multimeter. So the customer has 2 power supplies, so that's why he believes these won't be faulty, because he's tried 2, and that's normally the case. So let's just see. So typically these being Japanese, you don't normally want to put more than 110 volts in. And we can see this one is 110 volts. This one actually says between 100 and 240, but we'll still stick to 100 volts. So let's start with this one. Let's just connect it up to my step-down transformer, turn it on, and let's measure it for 9 volts. And we don't get anything. Now I can see inside it recesses quite far down, so maybe if we go far enough, there we go. I can actually get 9 volts if I go far enough down. So is that enough to actually power the console? So that's kind of in. Turn the console on, go on ground, and let's see if we have 9 volts. So this one is working. Let's go on the outside, probe the inside, and we'll use a finer tip to get inside this one. And you can see this one is 14 volts. So even though it should be 9, it's 14. So they both appear to be working units. Now this is an LDO, so it'll handle the 14 volts, no problem. So we just plug in, turn on, and probe for voltage again. We'll obviously have 14 in here. And you can see it's already dropped to 12 under load. And let's just probe again. And you can see we again have output. So this is all fully functional. It's obviously had all the diagnostics and tests done to make sure everything's functional. So there's only one thing left now, and that's to use the customer's exact original setup. So obviously the customer wasn't using a step-down transformer like this. They have provided us with their step-down transformer. So let's power this exactly as they would have, and let's see if their equipment is fully functional. Because this is why we often tell customers if they want everything to be checked, to send everything they use in with the repair. Otherwise, if this board just got sent in, it's obviously fully functional. So with that in now, we can simply measure the voltage on the power supply now. And this is still showing 14 volts. So this then means that likely the customer has an issue with the RGB output, because the console is definitely running, or he has an issue with the hue cards not loading, potentially using English hue cards, not Japanese, and if it's not region free, then it won't load those cards. So there's a few places to investigate. The next thing I'd do is let's check this install against the actual install guide for this mod. So a quick Google for just PC Engine Duo RGB modding will bring you to, say, this article. This is 8bitplus.co.uk. And if we read through here, you can see they basically swap out the AV port that we've seen already done on this to an 8-pin AV port. Some use an amp, which is not necessary. We've seen the signals clean, there's nothing to amplify. This is kind of a pointless spend. I guess if you have issues or your console is exceptionally dirty for some reason on the signal, this might help. But there's absolutely no need for an amp. And you can see this board we have right now doesn't have the amp, it just comes straight from here. So let's check the install. We should have the green pin, pin 47, blue is pin 49, and red is pin 51. You can see it says pin 45, 50, 55, so it's pointing to pin 50 here. So if that's pin 50, we have pin 49, 47, and 51. and you can see it said pin 49, 47 and 51. I'm not too concerned about the order of those pins because even if it was mixed up, the colours would just be wrong, and the customer mentions it doesn't work at all. The only thing left here then is it says C-Sync can also be extracted from pin 44, because that was my initial wonder, was on this board at the minute, you can only see 3 wires, RGB. Well, RGB doesn't work without some kind of synchronization, that line start, so the sync pin that we saw when we probed. And when you read up on RGB, you'll find this is where a lot of the confusion comes from. RGB can have the red, green and blue signals, but then it's how does it synchronize? How does it find the starting point of a frame? So you'll have things like sync on green, C-Sync, sync on composite. There's various names for various techniques, but what they're referring to is effectively this signal right here. So this low pulse at the start of every line, so it knows where to go. And if we zoom out far enough, you will see that as well as the short pulses, every now and then, which is every hundreds of lines, you'll see this happen, which is the vertical sync. So this is part of a C-Sync signal. It combines both the horizontal lines, all these little ones, so lines on the screen, and then when it gets to the end and it wants to start a new full image, full frame, it does, in this case, 3 low, long pulses, and this is called a C-Sync signal. It combines H-Sync and V-Sync together. So the reason this RGB cable should work, this connector, is it will use specifically just this sync portion of the composite. So all of this noise, all of this color and all the data gets ignored, and all it cares about is this dip. The problem you might have with that is obviously this signal isn't clean. It's got everything on top of everything. So it's got the C-Sync signal, as you see here, and then all of the information about the color as well. So what this guide is recommending is to use the C-Sync directly. So you can tap it off pin 44 and have a much better signal. So what does that mean? That means instead of that dirty composite, it wants us to tap off pin 44 here. So this was 49, 46, 5, 4. So if we look at that now, that should look familiar to you now. This is just a higher voltage, but basically clean C-Sync. So you can see there is the frame start that we saw before. Here are all of the pulses for the start of new lines, but you'll notice there's absolutely nothing in between. It's just pure sync signal. There's no composite, there's no brightness, luma, or chroma. It's just pure sync. So what this guide is saying and recommending in essence is to replace the composite pin on this port, so the composite pin down here, with the C-Sync signal here. What that will do, however, is remove composite from the output, so you won't be able to get composite without redoing some work. But it will clean up the RGB signal. It will allow RGB to work with true C-Sync. So it might be that the capture device or the input device that the customer is using can't support a sync signal on a dirty composite. It might want clean C-Sync. So my guess is very much that that is going to be the issue with this console, and we should wire C-Sync to the AV port. So I'll first contact the customer before I do that work, and if so, all I'm going to do is take pin 44 off here, wire it to the composite pin on here, and simply either cut the trace or lift the pin so that the original composite signal doesn't obviously mix with C-Sync. That will be the mod done, and then we can test if RGB works. And just to be extra sure this console is booting, I'm confident in the oscilloscope and visually viewing that it's outputting data. I don't have, like I say, the RGB output, but what I do have lying around is just a simple composite video, and this is just a bare composite lead. So let's just solder this up to what we know are the composite pins on the back of here, and let's just connect this up and see if we get composite. If you check out the Retro6 wiki, we can scroll down and simply look at the underside of this board, and you can see composite is on the left side, then audio right, then ground, and then left. So we just simply miss this pin and go composite audio, ground audio. And I could leave these leads on for the customer to potentially confirm that their cartridge and setup at home is working. And if it is an RGB issue, they could just connect up the composite and visually see if that's the issue. And that will do. As I mentioned, purely temporary, so I can see this isn't touching, this isn't touching. They're just a little bit long, but this is my test lead, so I don't want to cut these wires because sometimes you need the extra length. And now with that hooked up, let's turn on, and I presume we will get composite. And there you go. You can see we have the composite. We've got audio, I just got it turned down, but you can probably hear that audio just about playing. So if I turn it up there, you can hear the audio's playing fine. And the video signal looks fairly clean for composite at least. So we know that's working, we know the console's booting. And the issue's got to be with the RGB cable itself that the customer's provided, or the setup receiving it due to the C-Sync. But hopefully you can see how I diagnose things without any schematic, any information, what tools I use, and how to be confident that something's working without potentially even visually seeing it on screen. So even though this was technically working, and we've probably found that the issue is simply a requirement here, or the final AV lead, the main take from this was the importance of how to diagnose and how to test things. So hopefully this was useful for you guys, and that's it for this one. I'll catch you in the next.